Hey, everybody. Welcome to my new show. Welcome, everyone. This is the Whole Woman Live. This is a weekly space that I've created for women that want to stop restarting their health journey, their fitness journey, their wellness journey, and come here to learn how to find sustainable ways of um, finding their health, finding their body, their safety. Okay. So we'll be here every Tuesday, giving real life conversations for women's health, okay, and their fitness, and just being open and honest about where we are and what we can do to feel better. Okay. Um, so yeah, and especially to see like what it looks like in this season. So I've created this space for women 35 and up, although anybody is welcome. But we know that, you know, around 35, maybe even 30, things start to change, and our wellness habits, our patterns that we used to do, that we adapted in our 20s and in our early 30s, or even if you're older in your 40s, isn't working anymore. Like you have to find a new way of being able to adapt and flow with life, and that requires you to find a lifestyle, find a pattern, find a habit, find a rhythm that works with you. Okay. Because I know there are so many women out there that are tired of starting over, stopping, and then feeling really bad about themselves for having to start over again. And we know that that's just um, the result of not having something in a rhythm, in a lifestyle, right? Being able to adjust instead of quitting. Okay, so I'm here to help you with that. I'm so excited to be here. I'm Rashida Joy. I'm Rashida Joy. I am a nutritionist and I am a master fitness coach now for over 15 years. I helped a lot of women not only just find their wellness, find their health. I counsel a lot of women about what they eat, how to incorporate more whole foods into their diet, which is key. And also learning how to incorporate all of that without it being a diet, right? I think, women start over, and women being tired of starting over and over and over again comes from not first of all, not being able to see it as we grew up. Okay. So, you may have seen your mom or some family member go on and off of diets, right? Or they knew exactly what they had to stop eating in order to lose weight or what they had to do in order to lose weight. I think like when I was in my 20s and I wanted to lose weight, all I had to do was like go running. Like I would just go running and I would just run a couple days a week, and then I was like back down to where I wanted to be. And now when you try to do that in your 40s or your late 30s, it's not the same anymore. First of all, your body is not functioning the way it used to. Your knees probably hurt, okay? Your metabolism is quite different. We didn't really have to adjust a lot of things when we were 20 and 30, like when it comes to our food. We could just stop eating some chips. We could eat some rice cakes, or some of us used to take diet pills, right? And I'll talk about diet pills and things like that later. But those same tricks, same gimmicks aren't working anymore, and we have to find better ways, healthier ways, more sustainable ways of being able to feel better, right? To lose weight, to feel healthy. Okay, it's not about the removing all this from your diet and can't have this anymore, or you could just go out and run for 3 miles and be back down to where you thought you would be. You have a couple things, not just willpower, which a lot of women like to think is just willpower, but a lot of times it's your hormones fighting against you. It's your time, okay? It's your energy. You have a lot more responsibilities now than you had back then, okay? So nothing is the same. Nothing is the same. But we haven't adapted how you can work with your schedule, work with your lifestyle. right? And that's what the whole woman is about. And it's not just, about the training part or the performance or, going to the gym and running and even just not just about the diet and things like that. It's really about your nervous system and about rest, right? Because we've learned, maybe not, but there's been a lot of talk about cortisol levels. And when your cortisol levels are high, it's super hard to lose weight. You're super stressed. Okay. And then not even to think about you're feeling stressed because you got the weight, and you got the weight because you're stressed. And it just does this circle that happens all the time. Okay. So um we're gonna talk more about that. Okay. And if you have any questions about anything, let me know. Thank you guys for watching. I'm really excited about the whole woman. It's really something that's evolved for me to be able to talk about, to be able to share with you guys. I'm doing this live, and my camera is like facing, like, I like the camera to face like me. Like, this is my right side, but it looks like the left. I wanted to have like a mirror effect. Okay, so let's talk about what we used to do in our 20s and 30s and how that strategy isn't working anymore. Not only are we now having more responsibility, the stress from family and being able to um, make the time to do the things that you used to do. I know some women close to me when they wanted to lose a little bit of weight, like I said earlier, they would just go running or, they would just fast or all kinds of things that we used to do. Like I said, some people used to take diet pills. And if you grow up thinking that is the way that you lose weight and it works, when you get into your 30s and your 40s and you find out that that same thing isn't working, you'll start to think that something is wrong with your body. And there's nothing wrong with anybody's body. It's just that the same things aren't working anymore. So, and honestly, even in our 20s and 30s, those weren't the correct ways of doing it either. We just had this way that seemed to work for us at the time. What I'm trying to say, you know what I'm saying? So, the same things aren't working anymore. The same tricks, the same, I'm just going to drink this water. I'm just going to do this cleanse real quick. They're not working anymore. And like I said, now we have hormones that are working against us, right? Metabolism is working against us, right? Still, if we're eating the same foods that we were eating back then, that's working against us. And there are ways things we can do to be able to increase our metabolism, things we can do so that you can also um find a more holistic way instead of if you were taking those diet pills back then, that was really hurting us. And it never really gave us the discipline to know how to get into a calorie deficit in order to lose the weight. Okay. So those 20s and 30s are out the window, and we've got family and we've got stress and we've got work and you got all these things that are not necessarily on your side. There's just a new way of being that causes you to um, not feel your best, right? Or not even be in perfect or better health. Okay. And sometimes when I'm talking to you guys, I talk about weight loss and I talk about losing weight and all those things as a means of health. Okay. Not necessarily in the vanity part, even though we definitely want to look cute, but in the means of if you're having high blood pressure or high cholesterol. Because when you drop your cholesterol and you drop your blood pressure to get into normal ranges, for a lot of women, that requires losing a little bit of weight. Okay. So when we talk about this, please know that it's not all about aesthetics, which is where a lot of us get in trouble because we just want to think about aesthetics and how things look, but not actually how we feel, and not actually what our blood test, what our numbers are saying. Okay. So please remember that when I'm talking about that. So those 20s and 30s, those strategies aren't working anymore. And we have to develop new ways of maintaining wherever you are in this time in your season right now. Okay, because you could be in perimenopause and everything feels like it's fighting against you. You don't even know what's going on with your body. You're like, I used to do this, I used to be able to do that. This doesn't feel the same anymore. This hurts. Why does my shoulder hurt all of a sudden? There are things you can do to be able to feel safe in your body again. And they're not the same things, they're not the same circumstances that you were going through in your 20s and early 30s. Okay. So we got to find new ways. The church say new ways, new strategies. Okay. And then, you know, your wellness and your health, right? There was no rhythm to it, right? It was sometimes like a birthday, anniversary. You didn't find how to actually fit walks into your schedule, right? You didn't find ways of how to eat your cruciferous veggies, your nuts and your seeds, putting them in your daily regimen. Okay, so that made it very much like a project instead of it being a rhythm, a flow, right? This is what I do, a routine. So I stress about habits and routines a lot because that is what is sustainable once you create the routine, the habit. Okay. Because if I mean, I love projects. I love a good project. I like being goal oriented, focusing in and getting to it. But when you treat your health like that, it's not anything that is sustainable. Okay, you have to find a way to develop the habit, develop the practice. And the only way to develop a habit and a practice for your health is to actually practice it every day. So once we find out what works for you in this season, then we can develop habits and practices so that you can do this on a daily basis. And sometimes we set unrealistic expectations of ourselves, right? Like we can, say I'm gonna get up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, and you've got a newborn, like that doesn't necessarily work. And that also goes back to thinking what we used to do in our 20s and our 30s. So I'll just get up a little early and I'll go work out. But that might not be able to fit you right now, right? Or you're getting off work early, or you're getting off work late, and you're like, I'm gonna go to the gym late at night. And that is just not working for your stress. It's not working. You're like, okay, I need to go to the gym 5 days a week. And honestly, it's not sustainable. It's not working for you right now. So we have to see through, talking and figuring out what actually can work for you in this season right now. That way you're not disappointed when something doesn't work out, or if you find yourself um, having to like quit, right? Because it's like, oh, this wasn't even something I could do right now. And then once you get into your regimen and you're in your groove, how to actually monitor, how to adjust, okay, instead of quitting. All right. I find a lot of women have this attitude of all or nothing. I'm a run 5 days a week. And as soon as they skip a day or miss a day, it's like, oh, I'm quitting. Okay. And every time we missed a day, or every time we skipped something, or every time we made a mistake, we quit, you're going to be starting over and over and over again. Okay. So we have to find ways of adjusting and not quitting. And like, going back to the 20s and 30s, it was so much easier back then to go and work out 5 days a week, work out 4 days a week, eat a couple salads, and then we call ourselves like, okay, whew, I fit back in my jeans, I feel healthier, I feel slimmer, and that was that. But now things have changed. Things have changed, okay? And So many women go through a phase of where something just doesn't work out the way they had it, right? The meal didn't get prepped. They left the meal at home, okay? They had a meeting they had to go to, and they had donuts, and you had a donut, or you couldn't make it to the gym because you had a business meeting somewhere you had to travel for, and it's just like, "Up, I quit." Like, that just it didn't work out. I must have had to start over, and then when you have to start over, you start thinking about, "Oh my gosh, that was so painful when I started last time in the gym because my whole body was sore for weeks." Oh my gosh, that was so painful when I went on that diet because I couldn't have any carbs and I couldn't have any rice. And oh, it was just so painful. When, yes, that was very painful, but that doesn't necessarily mean you did it the correct way. You didn't do it a sustainable way. Okay. Most people, most women, when they get on that train, when they get ready to start working out, to start eating healthier, to increase their iron levels, to increase their energy, they do the all or nothing. They go in full blast and they find out that they cannot sustain that. So it's about creating habits and patterns and ways that will work for you to be able to sustain. And then secretly, there's a fear there that we all have of if I don't do it today, I'm gonna stop. And you don't want to stop. You don't want to stop and start over. But truth is, if you are going 100 miles per an hour, you cannot maintain 100 miles per an hour. So we have to find a way that works for you to be able to sustain and maintain a healthier lifestyle. Okay. Um, Yeah, and so many women, that live by that, the all or nothing. I'm going to go every single day. And that makes you more susceptible to injury and it makes you more susceptible to quitting when something doesn't work out, right? And then, sometimes things take us a little bit longer as we're getting older, all right? 5 pounds doesn't magically drop off like it used to drop off before. Okay. Like, oh, the scale's saying this. Let me do 2 weeks of this and everything be back to normal. No, that's not happening for women over 40 as much as it, compared to in our 20s and 30s. We have to adapt in a way. So if you're tired of starting over, allow me to help you find new ways of creating something that is sustainable. Okay. And we've all been there, we've all done it. Going back to our old ways of all we had to do was cut this out or take this pill and thinking things would be better and things will be okay. And as a society, we haven't gotten past the idea of quick fixes. We've got the Ozempic and the weight loss pills because people want the quick fix, but it's not something that is actually truly sustainable. Okay. Even the other day, I heard Oprah talking about. Let's talk about Oprah for a little bit. Oh yeah, I heard Oprah talking about, oh, she's on a GLP-1, right, which is the peptide like Ozempic. And she noticed that they kept telling her, like, you're never going to be able to get off of it. You're never going to be able to get off of it. So she said she tried to get off of it. She said, okay, I stopped it. And next thing you know, I was gaining 3 pounds and 5 pounds. Next thing you know, I was 20 pounds. And I had to get back on the GLP-1. And that didn't surprise me at all. They've been saying it all along. That is something that is going to be in your life. Like you're gonna have to take it forever. Okay. Especially if you haven't learned the ways of um something sustainable. All right. What the GLP-1 does, it does a lot of things. And it's not a bad thing. It's not for everybody. But the GLP-1, which is the Ozempics, one, they cut off the food noise. Okay. So when you're thinking about what am I going to eat? What am I going to eat? What am I going to eat? Oh, food, food, food. It cuts that noise out, which can be very helpful for people, right? But that doesn't mean that you're not still hungry. So it's basically cutting the noise out, telling yourself that you're not hungry when you are. And that is so much, lack of a better word, easier than actually being able and wanting to control what you eat. right? So there's some discipline and self-control um, mechanisms that would have to come in place for you to decide I'm hungry. I'm gonna choose something healthier, something that supports me, something that nourishes me versus what I may really want, the cheeseburger, the fries. And that's what the GLP-1 with can help with is being able to cut that out, but it doesn't help you make better choices if you ever decide to get off of the GLP-1. Okay? So that's what that does. So when you get off the GLP-1, you'll get the food noise back and you won't actually know how to nourish yourself. Okay. The other thing with Oprah, when she spoke on, and I love Oprah, right? And this has always been something really tough for her. And honestly, it's a blessing for her because it's always a lucrative angle she can always work at. Everybody knows she's, suffered with weight issues all of her life, but the other day we saw her showing exercising, right? And it's all strategic. She's showing that she's doing these exercises. And to be honest with you, she's not very proficient at the exercises. Like she's showing, oh my gosh, I did a deadlift. And we're so proud and happy for her working out. I know I am. But by her explaining and showing these things, it's very clear that she hadn't adapted a workout regimen before she got on GLP-1s. Okay. Now she is, I think she's 72, 75. Looks great, right? But that just tells you that people get on these medications and people have a harder time with their health in general because they're not adapting a lifestyle that's actually meant to help them, right? Your metabolism is slacking. You feel like you're gaining all of this weight, especially when you're 40 plus, because you have to build muscle. Okay. And it's never too late, right? Like Oprah's doing something now that if she starts building muscle and strength training, she'll be able to build muscle. She'll be able to build muscle, keep muscle, and maybe one day she'll be able to get off of the GLP-1, because you need muscle in order to be able to eat the foods that you want. And it's not necessarily that, the older you get, the harder and harder it is. It's just that we're not moving as much as we used to before, right? Like when we're in our 20s, we're moving all around, being able to go here and there, so much energy because you had time and space to do other things. But now, when you're in your 30s and your 40s, you may have children, you may have a husband, your knees may have hurt, your body may have been through some things that don't allow you the same output. So, therefore, you don't have as much energy to do the things that you were doing before, and your input hasn't changed, right? You're still eating the foods that we all enjoy and love. I eat them occasionally too. The cupcakes, the French fries, like all those things. So it's like, our mind still wants those foods that are familiar and comforting, but our output has changed. And you know how it is, the more productive you are at work, the less you move. Even when I'm with you guys, if I'm sitting here and I'm talking and chatting for an hour, that's an hour of movement I didn't do, but I feel so productive, right? We get more work done. And as we age, we want to make more money. We want to, um, get the things that we want. And that requires a lot of, typing and sitting and focus, but it doesn't mean that you get to move the way that you used to move, right? Like being on a college campus, walking all around, catching a bus, not having a car, all those things has played a role in how you need to adapt from that 20s and 30s mindset, teens losing weight, to how you may be now in 40s. Okay. And really, one of the things I really want to stress is that you have to allow yourself permission to change in the season that you're in. Okay. So if you're a new mom, right? Like, oh, you could have a kid in your 20s and then you had a kid in your 30s. It's not the same. Okay. Or if you are a person taking care of a parent, you don't have all the time to be able to work out and be on your fitness, right? You have to be able to adapt and adjust and not quit because you cannot do what you used to do. Develop a new plan, a new way of being. Hey guys, if you're in the chat, say hello. Okay. Find a new way of being able to sustain your health and maintain your clarity, your rest. Okay. And I didn't even really talk about rest much, but I'm definitely working on my rest this year because I've had this trait of like being able to go and go and go and have so much energy. And as we get older, we realize, like, man, a lot of the results, a lot of the muscle building, a lot of the um, nervous system clarity happens when we sleep. When we sleep. And what blocks us from sleep now? All the same responsibilities. Okay. Hey, Miss Penny. All the same responsibilities that will keep us, not moving, right? Work, children, stress, jobs. We think about all of that as we are trying to close our eyes and rest. And we find it so much more difficult getting proper sleep, right? And that can also result in injury and not exactly, on the weight loss, health, blood pressure reduction, all the things that we really want. So, what I talk a lot about is walking. And I think walking is the most sustainable way of exercising. Okay. The most sustainable way. I know I love working out, right? But as we get older and responsibilities change, you can learn the fundamentals, learn the foundation of good health, easy health, right? Because you can be consistent at walking, right? You can be consistent at doing something 3 times a week, 2 times a week. It doesn't have to be the all or nothing, you guys. A lot of people do the all or nothing. And if it's not all or nothing, they quit, right? You guys know how it is on a Monday. On that Monday, you're like, I'm doing everything right. And as soon as something throws you off beat on Wednesday, you may throw your hands up and be like, oh, this didn't work. Okay. And I know that takes so much more discipline for a lot of people to say, I'm going to do this 2 times a week consistently than to think I'm going to do something for 5 days a week. I think there's a fear there that if I don't do it 5 days a week or 7 days a week, I'm going to fall off. When really doing something 2 times a week or 3 times a week, every week for 6 months, you'll be so much further. Okay. So I don't want to, um, I guess I want you guys to know like you can really start off small, small habits. Okay. Make big changes. Learn how to adjust. All right. Instead of just quitting and learning how to adapt more holistic ways, more holistic patterns, okay? Instead of the quick fixes of GLP-1s and the diet pills. It hasn't changed. It's a GLP-1 now called Ozempic, but back in the day it was Fen and it was um what's the other pills names? What's some of the other pills people used to take? Fat burners and like all those things that people used to take from the CVS and drugstore and all those things. And then that was how a lot of people were depending on weight loss back then, instead of actually learning how to implement healthier habits. I'm telling you, once you figure out a rhythm and you can understand, like, okay, my body likes this. Okay, I could incorporate this every day. I can still eat carbohydrates. I just have to make sure I'm eating the right ones. Because, you guys on Instagram, I can talk to so many women throughout the day, and they're like, I'm going on a sugar cleanse. I'm cutting out all the sugar. And I'm like, that's nice. But now we need to create something that is sustainable because nobody's going to go without sugar every day, like forever. It's not realistic, right? What is realistic is that we can change how we look at sweets, right? We could change what kind of sweets we eat, and we can adapt behaviors so that you can still have your sweet treats because that is quite painful if you ask me. I'm never going to have a cookie. I'm cutting it all out. And then what happens then? Most people will go and then binge on the cookies when they get off the cookie, when they get back on the sugar. It's like, cookie monster. Okay. So that is something that you want to create sustainability in. And it's just the behaviors of the 20s and the 30s. Yeah, I can cut out cookies and cut out carbs. And in 2 weeks, I will be back down to a size, whatever I want it to be. Okay. So changing that mindset shift is going to be huge. Okay. Yeah. So thank you guys for coming and chatting and talking with me. I'll be here every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time to be able to answer questions about how to create sustainability, how to create discipline and health, and what that looks like in this season of your life and in my life. Okay. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask. Otherwise, have a wonderful, great day, and I will see you guys next Tuesday.